I got my first job right out of nursing school in a dying town called Black Hollow, the kind of place where Main Street is just a few blocks long, where the street lights flicker, where businesses close early, a town where people leave and no one replaces them. Instead of renting a sleek apartment an hour away, I found a house. A vacant, time-worn place that had been on the market for far too long. The kind of house people look at, but never buy. My boyfriend begged me not to move. Don't take that job. Hell, don't even drive through that town. I laughed him off. Did you stop to think why no one has filled that amazing position? He was just being paranoid. I worked for this. This was my money, my decision. So I signed the lease, moved in, and that's when it started. They say if you hear something strange at night, you should ignore it. That's what I tried to do. At first, it was little things. A missing sock, a misplaced hairbrush, my orange juice, just slightly off from where I left it in the fridge, a cabinet left ajar when I was certain I had closed it. Then came the sounds, soft creaks, always at night, always from above me, the kind you can explain away. Houses settle, floors expand, pipes shift, but then one night, 3:12 a.m., a sound, software slow, rhythmic, breathing, but not mine. I held my breath, heart hammering in my ribs. The sound drifted through the vent above my bed. Someone was up there, and they were awake. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream. But then, I saw it, the attic hatch, cracked open, barely an inch, but enough to notice, enough to make my stomach twist. I hadn't touched that door in months. Swallowing my unease, I grabbed a broomstick and nudged the hatch open. Dust rained down like tiny ghosts. Silence. I climbed onto a chair, heart pounding, and peeked inside. Nothing, just insulation, old boxes, shadows clinging to the corners. Then, a rustle. I flinched, heart skidding. Nothing. A rat. Probably. Just my paranoia, or so I thought. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. Should I put a camera up there? A tripwire? Maybe attach a bell to the attic door? I settled on something simpler. Masking tape along the edges of the hatch. If it moved, I'd know. I went to the kitchen for tape, but I didn't have any. Fine. I'd buy some in the morning. And with a false sense of control, I fell asleep. 3:12 a.m. again. I woke up. The room was silent. Too silent. Wrong. Then I saw it. The attic hatch. Wide open. My breath hitched. Then, a hand. Slender fingers curled around the edge of the attic opening and nudged the hatch up. I nearly screamed. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Somehow. To this day, I don't know how I moved without making a sound. I backed into my room, locked the door. Then I did the most normal thing I could think of. I picked up my phone, pretended I was just scrolling, pretended I wasn't unraveling from the inside out. I grabbed my car keys, and without breaking into a run, somehow, I walked out the front door, shut it, locked it. Then I collapsed on the porch, hands trembling so hard I could barely dial 911. Someone's in my attic. The dispatcher's voice was calm, reassuring. I was outside. I was safe. She told me to stay put. Minutes later, police arrived. No sirens, no lights. They entered cautiously, surrounded the trapdoor. "Come out with your hands up." Silence. Then, the door creaked, and she appeared. A woman. Thin. Malnourished. Hair hanging in greasy strands around her face. Her skin was sallow, sun-starved, and she was wearing One of my shirts. The attic stank. Sweat. Rotting food. Something worse. Scattered across the space. My missing clothes. A sleeping bag. Empty food wrappers. A notepad. The officer flipped through it, face paling. Page after page of scribbled notes. My name. My schedule. What time I left the house. What time I went to bed. And at the very bottom, in trembling handwriting, I watch you sleep. No forced entry. She hadn't broken in. Maybe she slipped through the side door when I forgot to lock it, or climbed through an unlocked window. However she got in, she never left. She had been there for months, watching me, waiting. The police charged her with third-degree burglary and trespassing. That was it. That was all. She was taken away. No one knew who she was. No missing persons report. No ID. Nothing. She was just there. I left that morning. Didn't even pack my things. Just got in my car and drove. I moved in with my boyfriend that same day. He didn't say I told you so. He just held me. While I sat in silence, jumping at every tiny sound. But sometimes, even now, I wake up at 3:12 a.m. and I wonder, am I really alone in this house? Or is someone watching me? Lock your doors. If you ever hear something strange in the night, maybe don't ignore it, because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't ghosts or demons. They're the ones who live right above you. If you like this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And tell me, what's the creepiest unexplained thing that's ever happened to you? I'll be reading the best ones in my next video. I live alone on the edge of a small town, just past the last gas station, right before the road turns to gravel. It's quiet out here. That's the way I like it. I've got a dog, a modest little house, and a routine I don't stray far from. Because I work late nights at the warehouse, I usually get home after midnight. The porch light never stays on long enough, so I installed a motion-activated floodlight above the front door. It's one of those industrial ones that lights up the whole front yard like a spotlight. Makes me feel a little safer. Normally, when it clicks on, I assume it's my dog sniffing around, or maybe a raccoon crossing the path. But one night last November, it wasn't either. I got home around 1:15 a.m., took my dog out back, made a sandwich, and passed out on the couch with the TV on. I remember waking up suddenly, not because of a noise, but because of a light. That sharp, artificial click of the motion sensor turning on. It's faint, but in the middle of the night, it might as well be a gunshot. I sat up and looked toward the front window. The yard was glowing in that pale, cold light, but I couldn't see anything moving. At first, I thought it was a false alarm, but something made me stay still. I turned the TV volume down and listened. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just silence. I crept over to the window and peeled the curtain back an inch. There was a man standing at the edge of the light, not walking, not approaching the house, just standing, almost like he was testing the edge of the sensor's range. His head was turned slightly, facing the porch, not moving, not blinking, just watching. I couldn't make out much. No visible weapon, no expression. He looked older, maybe 50s, wearing a jacket, hands at his sides. The weirdest part was that he didn't seem startled by the light. He didn't flinch or turn away, like most people would if they were caught somewhere they weren't supposed to be. I backed away from the curtain, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. Called 911 and whispered what I saw. The dispatcher kept asking questions I couldn't answer. Did he say anything? Was he holding something? I couldn't stop thinking about how he was just standing there. I checked again mid-call. He was gone. No sound, no footsteps, just an empty yard. The light was still on. When the cops showed up about 15 minutes later, they took a look around, shined flashlights into the trees, asked me a few questions. I showed them where he was standing. One of them walked out to the edge of the porch and looked up at the light. That's when he said something that stuck with me. "You know this bulb was loose, right?" I said no. I had just changed it the week before. He told me it had been twisted out, not enough to stop working entirely, but just enough to delay the activation by a few seconds. He said someone would have had to stand on a chair or ladder to do it. Carefully, quietly, sometime earlier that day, or maybe the night before. That meant the man had been planning to approach the house without being seen. He just didn't expect me to be awake. They never found him. My sister and her husband live in one of those big, 2-story houses on the edge of town. Suburban, quiet, nothing around but cul-de-sacs and carefully trimmed lawns. They just had their first kid a few months ago, so when they asked me to babysit one Saturday night, I said sure, without thinking twice. They needed a break, and honestly, I could use a night away from my cramped apartment. They told me the baby, Emma, usually went to sleep by 9, and once she was out, she was out. The only thing I really needed to do was keep an eye on the monitor. It was the kind with just audio. No screen, no app, just a plastic speaker that sat on the kitchen counter and lit up when it picked up sound. I remember my sister saying it was low-tech but reliable, and that it never picked up anything except Emma. For the first few hours, everything was normal. I fed the baby, put her down just before 9, then came downstairs, made tea, and stretched out on the couch with a book. Around 10:30, I heard a soft static hum from the monitor, then a few quiet clicks, like someone shifting in a chair or brushing against a microphone. I paused, listening. The green light was blinking. I figured Emma had rolled over in her sleep or something. I waited, didn't hear anything else, and went back to reading. About 20 minutes later, I started hearing a voice. It was faint, too soft to understand at first. I thought maybe the monitor was catching interference from another house. It happens, right? Old baby monitors used to cross signals all the time. But the voice got louder. Not louder in volume, but clearer, like whoever was speaking was getting closer to the mic. I leaned in. Still couldn't make out the words. My heart was beating a little faster now, but I tried to play it off. Probably just the baby babbling. That's what babies do. And then I heard it. Clear, quiet, and calm. She's still asleep. It didn't sound like my sister, and it definitely wasn't a baby. It was a man's voice. Low, slow, almost like he was talking to himself. I stood up so fast the book fell off my lap. I didn't even grab my phone. I just ran upstairs. The nursery was dark, but quiet. Emma was lying in her crib, breathing softly, one hand clutching a little stuffed bunny. The room was empty. I checked the closet, under the crib, even looked behind the curtains. Nothing. I stood there for a long time, listening. The house was dead silent. Eventually, I went back downstairs and looked at the monitor. It was off. Not just the volume turned down. The power switch was flipped. And here's the thing. I never touched it. I hadn't gone near the monitor since I turned it on that night. I flipped it back on. No sound. No blinking light. Just silence. When my sister and her husband got back a little after midnight, I told them what happened. My sister went pale. Said the monitor runs on a private frequency. Not Wi-Fi. Not Bluetooth. Just a short-range signal between the baby's room and the speaker downstairs. It shouldn't be possible for anyone else to talk through it. But that wasn't even the worst part. She told me the volume dial had been acting weird lately. Said it kept getting turned down, like someone was messing with it when they weren't home. She thought it was just her husband forgetting to check it. They replaced the monitor the next day, but I kept thinking about the voice, the way it said it. She's still asleep, like he'd been checking, like he'd been waiting. And there's something else I didn't tell them. When I ran upstairs, I passed the hallway window. Just for a second, I thought I saw someone standing across the street, just beyond the streetlight, half hidden behind a tree, not moving, just watching the house. By the time I looked again, they were gone. Back when I was in grad school, I rented an old 2-story house just a few blocks from campus. It was one of those creaky, drafty places with stained carpets, uneven floors, and a weird smell that never quite went away. But the rent was cheap, and the landlord mostly left me alone. I lived alone, which I didn't mind. I'd been doing it for years. I liked the quiet, especially late at night when I was writing or reading. The place had character. You get used to the old house sounds, the pipes knocking, the wind slipping through the windows, the floors shifting under their own weight. But there's one sound I never got used to. It happened one night around 2 a.m. I was at the kitchen table working on a paper when I heard a soft creak from upstairs. It wasn't loud, just enough to make me stop typing. It came from directly above me, right by the upstairs hallway closet. I know that because there's a warped floorboard up there that makes a specific sound, kind of a double creak, like a slow footstep. I'd stepped on it enough times to recognize it without thinking. But that night, I hadn't been upstairs. Not since the morning. I waited in silence, staring at the ceiling. No more sounds. I told myself the house was settling, but something about it made my skin crawl. I couldn't focus anymore. I stood up, turned off the stove light, and slowly climbed the stairs. The hallway was dark. I didn't turn on the lights, just let my eyes adjust to the moonlight coming through the small window at the end of the hall. I looked at the closet door. It was cracked open. Now, I always kept it shut. The latch stuck a bit, so I had to tug it to close it tight. But it never stayed half open. The floor was uneven there. It either swung all the way open or stayed shut. I stood there just staring at it. Eventually, I opened the door. It was empty. Just some coats, an old suitcase, a mop bucket I never used. But when I turned to head back downstairs, I noticed something else. The attic hatch in the ceiling, the one above the closet, was slightly ajar. It was maybe an inch open, just enough to see the edge of the frame had been moved. I'd never touched that hatch. never even thought about it. But now, I couldn't stop imagining someone pushing it closed, slowly, carefully, just moments before I came up the stairs. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep that night. The next day, I bought one of those pole locks that wedges under the doorknob. I started keeping it against the front door. I also started sleeping with a flashlight next to the bed. A week later, I mentioned it to my landlord, asked if anyone else had keys to the house. He hesitated, then said the last tenant left in a hurry, and he was pretty sure he changed all the locks. I changed them myself that same afternoon. I never heard the creak again. Never found any evidence of someone being up there. But I never used that attic either. And I never opened that closet again at night.
She called 911, but no one came. A rookie cop found her body in a motel. No witnesses, no backup, just blood and a phone still recording. The voice on that phone, it said, "Don't let him take me." I was supposed to protect her, but someone higher up wanted her gone. They shut me down. My partner got shot, and the guy calling the shots, he wore a badge too. That's when I learned justice doesn't wait for permission. Some cases stay with you. This one never left. Don't let him take me.